Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Northwest Indiana Green Drinks. And I was asked this question a little bit earlier by one of our presenters. We are closing out our 11th year of celebrating, getting together, and learning about all kinds of green and ecological things together. And beginning January 2024, we will begin year 12. And you probably noticed I skipped over December. That's because in December, we take our customary holiday break. So we'll be doing that again this year, so you can get ready and do everything that you need to do for the holidays. So I am very excited about today's presentation, and Em is going to be doing the introductions. But first of all, I do want to acknowledge our co-sponsors. And we have our co-sponsors actually have been with us for a number of years now, and without them, we wouldn't be able to do this. So Save the Dunes, of course, is one of our co-sponsors, and Em Racine is here representing that organization today, and I guess I am too because I'm president of the board. Michigan City Sustainability Commission. Plus, we're supported on social media and by MailChimp by the organization called 219 Green Connect. And unfortunately, Kathy Sipple couldn't be with us today because there's a big item meeting over in Porter today, and they're collecting information on what residents would like to have in a climate action plan for the whole state of Indiana. So that exciting thing is happening right now. Our guest hosts this month are 95.1 FM AM 1420 WIMS. I was on the radio station, not as early this time. I got a 9:15 slot instead of 6:45. Woohoo! That was great. And then also, I want to acknowledge the Wetlands Initiative. Without the people here from that organization, we would have absolutely no program this evening. And then I'm going to read off all of the organizations that are part of the Little Calumet Conservation Collaborative, because to be honest with you, I didn't know about this as an existing entity. And if I didn't know, I think a lot of you don't know also. So part of that group is the Audubon Great Lakes, Lake County Parks and Recreation, Little Calumet River Basin Development Commission, the Nature Conservancy of Indiana, City of Gary, and NIPSCO. And if I missed anybody, I hope that our presenters will fill in with whatever I didn't pick up. I'm going to hand it over to Em now, and she's going to do our housekeeping items because we want you to know how to participate since we put you all on mute. Em? You're muted.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're so happy to have Lindsay and Harry here to do our programming, our Once and Future Wetlands, our Ecology and Engineering. Everybody, just so you know, who's in Zoom and on Facebook, that we are recording this. So please remain muted. And if you have any questions or comments here on Zoom, leave them in the chat for us. And on Facebook Live, leave them in the comments for us. So quick introduction here. Welcome to artist Lindsay Olson, the current and first ever artist in residence with the Wetlands Initiative, and Harry Kuttner, the Calumet Coordinator for the Wetlands Initiative. Tonight, we're going to look at an inspired look into how ecology and art overlap. We really hope this presentation will deepen your knowledge of the importance of wetlands and highlight some new ways to connect with these dynamic habitats. All right. Do you want to go ahead, Lindsay? Is there any other things, Nancy?
Let me get my screen set up.
How to leave questions, Em? Did you mention that?
Any comments or questions in the chat, we'll answer them at the end of the presentation.
So if you're on Zoom, put them in the chat section, and if you're on Facebook Live, put them in comments, please. Thank you.
Okay, are we ready? All right, here we go. Thank you very much for inviting us to come and present our program tonight. We really appreciate you coming in. For the last decade, I've been partnering with scientists and conservation groups to create art that helps to tell the story about scientific research connecting our society and supporting our society. I use my artwork to communicate the elegant necessity and the life-saving work of ecologists and scientists. As Em mentioned, I am the first ever artist in residence with the Wetland Initiative. It's a great honor. And in June of 2022, I found myself standing in the bright sunlight in the little Calumet River corridor. And this is to illustrate here that wetland restoration begins with controlling the hydrology. So that means installing water control structures that mimic the natural hydrology in this region. And that particular day, we were installing water gauges that would measure the ebb and flow of the water in this particular site. So that day, I was listening to discussions between Dr. Gary Sullivan, who's in the audience, by the way. He is TWI's senior ecologist, and Harry Kuttner was there also. He's the Calumet Coordinator, as Em mentioned, and Jim Munchuk, who's the geospatial analyst for TWI. And they were talking about the previous season's eradication of Phragmites and making plans for the coming season's planting. So in the background at this site, I am listening to the expressway drone on, but also intermingled with all that traffic was the sound of bird calls and an extraordinary number of pollinators. This place really feels alive with energy and not just the kind pulsating through the ComEd pylons above our heads. So at my feet were rattlesnake master, hybrid cattail, hardstem bulrush, sweet flag, just to name a few. And these were all thriving in that space created by the removal of the invasives the previous fall. So having nearly fallen in the muck that morning, kind of a sort of half baptism, I also realized that I was falling hard for wetland restoration work in general, and this region in particular. TWI's expansive restoration was already taking root here in the center of the Rust Belt. So for a long time, these severely degraded parcels of land have been on conservationists' wish lists for restoration for just a really, really long time. And now TWI, in partnership with other organizations, has already achieved huge gains in healing some of these damaged ecosystems, and they're returning them to be welcoming, publicly accessible natural areas that support rare birds and wildlife. Their work is a stunning reminder of the power of collaboration and community engagement to bring back natural processes. So working alongside the crew that day, I really learned a lot about the importance of hemimarsh. Now, hemimarsh habitat is difficult to set up in these tiny parcels of land because the region is no longer connected to the original hydrology. So TWI works to resculpt the land and installs water control structures that mimic these natural cycles that are necessary. It's the ebb and flow of water in these isolated parcels of land that are really important. So when these processes are returned, nature takes over and the wetlands begin to function as they were intended, to clean water, to support a diverse group of plants, insects, animals, birds, and actually there are some even unique microbes to this region that are coming back too. Now, when the right water conditions are restored, hemimarsh is created primarily by muskrats, and they do so by cutting down marsh vegetation in a characteristic pattern. They create their homes and feeding platforms within the aquatic landscape in such a way that it really helps other species as well. So they're really the hemimarsh architects. Now, beavers do create deep channels for traveling, and sometimes they cut across the land, but they are not really responsible for the hemimarsh architecture. Muskrats, oddly enough, are really the key partners for TWI in their restoration efforts. In my studio practice, I have 3 phases of work. The first involves conducting research, both my own visual research and working in the field to understand how wetland restoration works. Then I translate what I learn into accessible art, and I use the project to help others appreciate TWI's restoration work. Now, this was the first of 3 pieces created about the Calumet. And in it, you can see some of that suggestion of the shoreline and the different bathymetry depths in the water for hemimarsh. It takes a really gentle approach. You have to have a really gentle land slope in order to make a functioning hemimarsh. It needs lots of different water depths. And in the piece, these little squares that are around the neckline and the bottom of this piece, that is a stand-in for all the tiny parcels of land. And Harry's going to show you some really amazing maps where you can see the ownership of these tiny parcels of land is divided among so many different stakeholders. It really takes a lot of patience and persistence to untangle the ownership of these areas and get permission to do the restoration work. So even though the restoration efforts are in their early stages here, there's secretive marsh birds like the state endangered common gullinaul, the black-crowned night heron, and pollinators and other insects and amphibians and fish. They're all coming back to reestablish themselves in this region. Now, I want you to just take a moment here to notice that there is someone who is not in hip waders, and that is me. I was the photographer and the dry land helper and passer of tools. So I left this sort of hip wading, deep water water gauge installation to the experts. This is at the Highland Heron Rookery, and we were installing another water gauge at this site. And so after we parked on literally the expressway off ramp, we dragged our tools down this enormous levee, very steep. We dragged all our tools down. And then what we did was we walked across a 10-foot wide, 60-foot perfect arc of a dam that a beaver had built. And it was hard to ignore the construction of this beautiful, sturdy, solid dam and the relationship to other builders, the Army Corps of Engineers, who had created the levee system that kind of connects businesses and transportation in the region. So with the expertise of the field and book learning and interviews, it was time to return to the studio and begin the process of collecting ideas for the art side of things. Now, sci-art exists on a continuum. So at one end of the continuum, you have scientific illustration, which is really art in the service of science, illustrating a concept or data, something like that. On the other side of the equation, you have all the whiz-bangs, special effects of fine arts, and a little bit of science. So what I do in my practice is to try to find the very center of that continuum. I want to have 50% of the work reflect accurate science, accurate restoration and conservation concepts. And then in the other half, I'm blending my training as an artist. So that I'm using all the tools in my toolkit. So I'm using things like color and value, line quality, texture, symmetry, and craftsmanship. I want to make the most beautiful work that I can make because I have, like maybe 3 seconds to grab people's attention. So early in my research, I had found this 3,000-year-old floral collar buried with King Tut in the online collection at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Now, many of us are familiar with the ancient Egyptian bejeweled collars that have been buried with kings and queens. What I did not know was that royalty was buried with these elaborately fashioned floral collars, and actually you can still identify some of the botany in these collars. That's how well preserved they are. So it was an instant, like an instant connection for me with people from thousands of years ago, because today, even we honor our dead with fresh flowers. That right there, that was a big draw for me with this inspiration on the piece. The other thing is that for years, I have been exploring the design possibilities of a circular format in my work. And these colors seem the perfect metaphor to express a broken circle, a metaphor for the cycles that have been disrupted in nature and the kind of consequences that we humans have wrought upon the land. It also expresses the ways in which our understanding of ecology and engineering are allowing us to restore these remnant wetlands. The other intriguing connection about this format for me was that, at least in its intent, the makers of these collars buried them with the dead, intending them to be a garment that people would wear in the afterlife. And I wanted that to be a connection with the viewer. So it would look like a garment that somebody could imagine wearing. and it kind of makes wetland restoration feel a little bit more personal. So here's the second piece related to the Calumet region. At the bottom of this piece is a suggestion of that beaver dam, which, by the way, was an absolutely perfect staging platform for all our equipment to set that water gauge up that day. So it was really useful and beautiful. I've also put in here some embroidery that hints at the fluctuation of water levels that were going to be the data that is going to be collected by these water gauges, and how it's really important to have like really low, almost dried out marsh area, and then have it flood, and then everything in between, in order to encourage things like seed sprouting and things like that with the different levels. And then right here you see the levees, a suggestion of the levees dividing these tiny little parcels of wetlands, hemi-marsh here, and then cutting the whole thing, slicing right through it, is an expression of the expressways that dominate the region. So I create art primarily in textiles because all of us use textiles every day, and we can easily relate to them. We use them to create comfortable homes and express ourselves in fashion. And I also use a lot of time-consuming hand processes like embroidery and beading. And these are a way to denote luxury and to sort of elevate the subject matter at the same time. It's also very unexpected to see art that's elegant about an industrial landscape, and that's another way to invite viewers in to take a closer look. I've also chosen to frame these pieces in a silver framed shadow box to kind of hold the pieces, because I wanted the presentation to have a kind of royal feel. I'm honoring the work we are engaged in by making the container look like a treasure chest. So the colors, the techniques, the elements all reflect the challenges faced today and the vision of the future of these wetland jewels in the making. It's a kind of quiet revolution in restoration and land conservation. At the bottom part of this collar, I've embroidered the names of American Indian tribes to acknowledge that these are the homelands of the Potawatomi and dozens of other native tribes. There are nearly 500,000 tribe members that make their home here in the upper Midwest region. Geology exerts a powerful influence on flora and its ability to flourish, or in this case, as you're seeing in the picture, not flourish. Floristic diversity reflects the nature of the terrain and in all its geologic intricacies. Now, at Indian Ridge Marsh, TWI is restoring a wetland over a layer of slag, which is a kind of industrial waste from the steelmaking process. This waste material is all over the region and nearly unavoidable. So restoring a wetland over this slag is a really unusual and bold concept for TWI to take on. One of my favorite days in the field was assisting the team with the floristic survey at Indian Ridge Marsh in southeast Chicago. This survey provided a great before snapshot of plant diversity ahead of the shoreline modifications. And a couple of weeks ago, the bulldozers came in and they completed the shoreline modification, which means that the bulldozers essentially tore apart the place and put into place Gary Sullivan's plan for that graduated, very gently sloped hemi-marsh shoreline. So it's really perfect now for the muskrats to get busy and do their work. So this project gives you a good idea of what the work in the Little Calumet River corridor is going to look like in the future. And to borrow a phrase from Star Trek, I really feel like TWA boldly goes where few conservation groups dare to go. So now that I've completed the artwork, it's time to begin the process of finding ways to put the project to work and help others see the elegant and beautiful results of restored wetlands. So if you know of a group that would like to participate in restoration work, or if you'd like to participate in restoration work, or exhibit the artwork or book us to speak, we are always looking for opportunities for others in the region to experience the beauty and possibilities of this exciting work. Gary Sullivan's photographs and my artwork are now hanging at the Oak Park Public Library's Art Gallery until November 11th. If you happen to be in the area, we are hosting a reception next Thursday night, November 9th at 6 p.m. if you're in the area, just drop by. We'd love to see you. It would be great to have you come and listen to the talk we're going to give. We're going to have a panel discussion and some nice nosh. So TWI has already proven what can be accomplished with decades of commitment to restoring this 3,000 acre land that was farmed for nearly a century. And they've turned it into high quality native habitat at the Dixon Waterfowl Refuge. This is their jewel in the crown, and it's the vision that guides their work in this region. And at a time when we are bombarded by the harsh realities of climate change, the work of TWI offers us a way forward using engineering prowess, a deep understanding of ecology, and a willingness to partner with like-minded communities and conservation groups. What we are witnessing is the creation of a functional wetland, literally clawed back from formerly degraded landscapes. It's been an honor to work with every member of the TWI team, and I can't wait to see how these skillful, hopeful projects develop in the coming years. So tonight, I just want to say that we can celebrate their successes and the artwork that helps to tell the story of wetland restoration. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. Harry, if you want to go ahead and share your screen, and we'll welcome Harry then to take the floor.
Sure. Yeah, thank you, Lindsay. Okay, all right, hi everybody. I'm Harry Kuttner. I'm the Calumet Coordinator with the Wetlands Initiative. I've been in this role for a little over 2 years. And essentially I help coordinate our projects across the Calumet region in Illinois as well as Northwest Indiana. I help to expand our partnerships in the region as well as execute habitat restoration projects. Just a second. Okay. Yeah, so I want to provide a little more context for the restoration work that Lindsay referenced in her presentation. I'll be talking about some of the sites that she visited that inspired her artwork. Just to start off, the Wetlands Initiative, we're an Illinois-based nonprofit, although we're based out of Chicago, but we work across Illinois as well as Northwest Indiana. Our focus is on wetland design, restoration, and creation. We kind of have 4 main focus areas. We own a 3,000 acre wetland along the Illinois River in Hennepin, Illinois. It's called the Dixon Waterfowl Refuge. It's open to the public year round. It's been in restoration for over 20 years. So it has some really great examples of higher quality native habitat. We also have been working at Medewin National Tallgrass Prairie since 1997. For those of you not familiar with the site, it's a 20,000 acre site located about 60 miles south of downtown Chicago. It's managed by the U.S. Forest Service, and we've been working in partnership with them. We also have the Smart Wetlands program. With this program, we work with Illinois farmers and cropland owners to reduce the flow of nutrients and fertilizer from farm fields into local waterways by installing constructed wetlands to collect drainage from these sites. And then we've been working in the Calumet region since around 2015, I think possibly earlier, and that's mostly what I'm here to talk about tonight. So both of these images, the one on the left is from the Calumet's Critical Wetlands in Illinois Conservation Action Plan. It shows a map of the southeast side of Chicago. with some conservation target sites highlighted. On the right, we have a similar map from a different conservation action plan, the Conservation Action Planning in the Calumet Report, which we helped create in partnership with the Calumet Land Conservation Partnership and numerous other organizations. So just to give a little context about our work in the Calumet. So since about 2015, the Wetlands Initiative has been working in collaboration with municipal groups and nonprofit conservation groups, as well as community organizations to identify, protect, and restore critical wetland habitat. So as I said, both of those maps come out of a conservation action planning process, which is a globally recognized framework for engaging in conservation work to benefit people and the environment. So through this collaborative process, stakeholders identify sites with the potential to be restored to benefit biodiversity, habitat connectivity, and human communities. One of the key habitat goals that was identified across these sites was the establishment of hemi-marsh habitat. You know, Lindsay mentioned that a couple times, and I will provide a more detailed explanation of what that actually is. But another key target identified in these conservation action plans was increasing access to nature for local residents in the region. So if you're not familiar, the Calumet region spans the southern rim of Lake Michigan from the southeast side of Chicago through northwest Indiana into southwest Michigan. Historically, it was once one of the most diverse. It housed one of the most diverse wetland ecosystems in North America, but due to a history of intense industry and development, there are very few high-quality natural areas that still remain in the region. Despite of this, the region still remains an important hub of biodiversity, especially for migratory wetland birds. The region is also home to many diverse and thriving human communities, many of whom have identified the need for increased access to nature for their communities. There's been a legacy of industrial pollution in the Calumet region, which has, created numerous environmental justice communities. So because of all these different factors, sites in the Calumet provide a unique opportunity to connect people with nature. Really, really quick, we've been working on the Illinois side of the Calumet for a bit longer than the Indiana side. So these are a few sites on the Illinois side that we've worked at. Indian Ridge Marsh, shown here, we've been working at with the Chicago Park District and in partnership with Audubon Great Lakes since about 2015. We've restored quite a large area of wetland habitat, notably, and Lindsay mentioned this, we have regraded and expanded over 3,600 linear feet of formerly steep unnatural shoreline to a more sloping natural shoreline to support more diverse habitat, essentially. Down here, this is Dead Stick Pond. This is a new water control structure that we installed in partnership with the Park District and Audubon Great Lakes. And then here, this is Square Marsh. This is one of our newest restoration sites. We're partnering with the Nature Conservancy of Illinois, as well as the Illinois International Port District. The site has huge potential for hemi-marsh restoration in the Calumet, as well as public access opportunities. So what exactly is hemi-marsh? We keep talking about it. So it's an interesting wetland habitat. It's essentially a 1-to-1 ratio of emergent vegetation and open water. As Lindsay referenced, it occurs across a specific range of water depths, typically between 1 feet and 3 feet, and it supports some really diverse wildlife. Across our conservation action planning, secretive marsh birds were identified as like a key habitat or biodiversity indicator. It's something that hemi-marsh is something that these species need for their migration, as well as as well as nesting, breeding year round. So hemimarsh, also as Lindsay referenced, is developed in large part with the help of muskrats. So we usually try not to say that we restore hemimarsh. At the Wetlands Initiative, we restore the habitat conditions under which hemimarsh can develop with the help of our, animal friends, essentially. So muskrats create openings within emergent vegetation by harvesting emergent plants to build nests and feeding platforms. Both result in mounds of vegetation surrounded by a cleared area with additional smaller clearings associated with feeding zones and access runs. And then in that shallower water, emergent species will grow the next season. But in the deeper water, permanent clearings are created and maintained. So as muskrat density increases in those habitats, the number of openings increase until large swaths of marsh vegetation are cleared to create the classic hemimarsh architecture. Submersed or floating leaved vegetation may then colonize the openings if the conditions are appropriate. So essentially over time, it's sort of like a boom and bust cycle. As muskrats move in and eat that emergent vegetation, they create more and more openings until eventually it's dominated by open water and that hemimarsh habitat sort of collapses. And then muskrats will move out. And then over time, that emergent vegetation will become more reintroduced. It'll fill back in, and then hopefully muskrats move back in. It supports some really interesting wildlife. Yeah. So I'm going to spend the rest of my presentation talking about our project area in Northwest Indiana. So this is a map of the bi-state Calumet region. That area circled in red is the west branch of the Little Calumet River. So here's another zoomed in image of our project area. The Little Calumet River, this is the west branch. It runs throughout the basin. So 5 or 6 years ago, the Wetlands Initiative started working with a group of nonprofit, private and municipal partners in Northwest Indiana to identify potential restoration sites. Our collection of partners became known as the Little Calumet River Conservation Collaborative. So on this map, these sites shown in green are our active first phase restoration sites. This yellow site here is sort of a next phase site that we identified. And then these parcels in blue are kind of longer term potential restoration sites. I'm also showing this map. These green dots are Audubon Great Lakes volunteer marsh bird monitoring points. So they have a program where volunteers go out a few times a year and report how many bird calls they're hearing within a defined window. So starting furthest west along that basin, we have Highland Heron Rookery. It's located in Highland, Indiana. It's about 125 acres. Moving to the east, we have Grant Street Wetland, which is about 200 acres, and that's located in Gary. And then we've got MLK South Wetland, which is just over 100 acres. Since 2019, we've been conducting on-the-ground restoration work at each of these 3 sites, and that work has largely been focused on sort of the initial heavy lifting of invasive plant species management. But we've also been doing some native plant introduction, and then at Highland Rookery and MLK South Wetland, we've recently installed new water control structures to help with the unstable hydrology at those sites. So another reason that we chose to work in this area is the presence of the Army Corps of Engineers levee system and the municipal organization that manages the levee system. And they're known as the Little Calumet River Basin Development Commission. So they are a municipal agency tasked with managing that extensive levee system. They manage levees through Hammond, Munster, Highland, and the city of Gary. And there's roughly 2,000 acres of land within that levee system. The Basin Commission owns a good portion of that land, and they also have flood control easement over the majority or over all of it. So before our partnership's involvement in that basin, the Basin Commission basically was managing that land just for flood control purposes. They were not, paying much attention to the type of wildlife or vegetation that was inhabiting those basins. So we saw a huge opportunity to take that unmanaged land, or take that land that was being managed for flood control and manage it for habitat restoration. So over the past few years, the Basin Commission has become a really important key partner for us. They help with collaborative planning. They give our partnership access to these areas, and they also give us funding. They've given us funding for 3 years straight to do some of the work at these sites. And it's been really interesting, over the past few years, the commission, who are primarily focused on public safety, using public funds to make sure that the levee system is working properly, to see them really become excited in this conservation work that we've been doing, to see the benefit, for the floodway, for native wildlife, but also for the residents, whose tax dollars they use. So just, moving on to talk about what our partnership looks like. The Wetlands Initiative is just one partner within this larger collaborative. So we're made up of the Little Calumet River Basin Development Commission, Audubon Great Lakes, which is also based out of Illinois, the city of Gary, the Nature Conservancy in Indiana, NIPSCO, and Lake County Parks and Recreation. So it's a really interesting partnership with, local partners, not so local partners. We bring lots of different expertise, community knowledge, knowledge of land ownership, stuff like that, as well as conservation expertise, hydraulic restoration expertise, stuff like that. So it's a really interesting partnership. And I've got this map up on the right just to show a couple of our project areas. All these different colors are different landowners. So this just kind of shows how complicated it can be to work in a highly urban area. And I think this is also a reminder, one of the reasons we chose to work here is because of how much impact we can have on local residents. There's communities surrounding all of these wetlands, just separated by the levees and roadways, essentially. So just really quickly, I'm going to move through these sites. I'm not going to say too much about them, but we've been doing sort of that initial restoration work at each of these sites, which largely involves the removal of invasive plant species. We're mostly using herbicide to achieve that, as well as mechanical removal. So this is Highland Rookery. This photo on the right is kind of an after photo after a lot of that Phragmites has been removed. So Phragmites or common reed is extremely aggressive non-native plant species. You see it along a lot of drainage ditches, along roadways, and it completely chokes out native vegetation. It's not hospitable to wildlife. Grant Street wetland, we've also been working on removing Phragmites. So you can kind of see this browned out area is where we've sprayed Phragmites for numerous years. We mowed it, and then you can see this darker green here is a transition to cattails. And then at MLK South Wetland, we have also been treating Phragmites. This past year, we used a drone to do aerial herbicide application. There's also a mixture of, on the ground herbicide application. So these are pretty complex sites to work at. Also at MLK South, this fall, we'll be doing a prescribed burn there. It's, difficult to burn in urban areas, mostly just getting approval from, the local municipalities. But prescribed burning is going to be a really important tool for long-term management at these sites going forward. It helps remove invasive species. It helps remove a lot of that standing dead vegetation that we've killed with herbicide, and then helps promote new plant germination. I also just want to mention Lake County Parks and Recreation as a full-time year-round restoration crew that's dedicated just to working along the Little Calumet River Basin at these different wetland sites and natural areas. The funding for that is largely coming through the Basin Commission. So that's another key achievement of our partnership over the past years, is sort of building this long-term maintenance into our project partnership. And again, that's really so far been in thanks to the Basin Commission. They've been really supportive of this. They're seeing the value of this. So we're hoping, to continue to secure funding into the future. So another huge piece of habitat restoration at these wetlands is trying to restore some type of hydraulic functioning that supports hemimarsh habitat. So with a lot of these systems, they're connected to the Little Calumet River through metal culverts. So you can kind of see a metal culvert down in the bottom of this photo, or big concrete culverts. So when the river floods, which it does periodically, water will flow into these wetlands. But typically, for the most part, the water has just drained out of the wetlands when the river flood stage goes down. So what that means is drier habitat during drought periods. You get invasion of Phragmites and other non-native species that like drier conditions, and a lot of those natives just don't have the right hydrology to be supported. So we just recently installed a water control structure at Martin Luther King South Wetland and Highland Rookery. So this is an image of MLK South. So essentially what this is it's a small concrete structure. It's known as a weir. So it's about a foot wide. This one's 20 feet long, and then it's got an opening in it that you can put in wooden boards. So this photo here over on the left, you can see some wooden boards underneath that water outfall. So this gives us the ability to manipulate water levels over a 2-foot regime, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you think back to that hemimarsh habitat, it wants to establish in a water depth of 1 to 3 feet. So this can make a really big difference, just having that little bit of flexibility in water level management. I think important to mention, because these are floodways, these structures don't have any impact on flood management or the flood management capabilities of the Basin Commission. So if there's a big flood event, that the Calumet River will go up, 8 feet or more. And it's just going to flow over a structure this small. So it's really not holding back any flood storage capacity. And then also, installing these structures gives land managers some flexibility. They can draw down water levels when they need to get out into wetter areas of the site to do invasive species management, to do native plug planting or seed spreading. You can also draw down water levels to allow for new emergent plant species germination. So, we just installed these structures, and we're really excited to see what changes will occur across our sites in the coming years. Another huge piece of our work out here has been community engagement. And I just want to start out by saying a lot of that community engagement has been done thanks to the hard work of Audubon Great Lakes Wild Indigo program, which has been led by Jennifer Johnson in Northwest Indiana. So Jen and the Audubon team, in partnership, with the rest of our West Branch partners, we've been working to build, relationships with small community groups. Jen has really spent time getting engaged with local block clubs, especially in the city of Gary. She's gotten to know community leaders and local residents. Wild Indigo, if you're not familiar, is a community engagement program that seeks to build lasting relationships between urban communities of color and their local natural areas. Their goal is to demonstrate the connection between healthy habitats and healthy urban communities via activities that familiarize adults and children with nature and wildlife that share space where they live, work, and play. So it's Wild Indigo engages residents in kind of non-traditional conservation ways. So getting out and just sort of talking about how people relate to nature, introducing kids to, birding walks, stuff like that. And yeah, it's been really helpful for our partnership to get to know local residents. Other programs that we've been running are native plant giveaways, bird hikes, and Jen has also done some native tree workshops at a local early childhood development center. So that's the Bethune Early Childhood Development Center. It's just north of some of our wetland project areas. This is a photo here from a native tree planting that we did with them last year. Unfortunately, I don't have a photo of the 100+ 3 and 4-year-olds that helped work with us. Don't have photo waivers for all of them. So this is just a photo of some of our partners. We partnered with the Student Conservation Association and the U.S. Forest Service Community Tree Program to get some native trees on that school's property. Other community engagement that we've been doing, we've been holding volunteer plug plantings, primarily at MLK South Wetland. It's the most accessible of our sites. So we've worked with Indiana University Northwest campus, some of their students. This photo down here is a group of NIPSCO volunteers that came out last year. And then just last week, we held our very first native plug planting at Highland Rookery Wetland. This is a photo of Gary Sullivan, our senior ecologist, teaching community volunteers how to plant native wetland plugs. And then last thing I want to touch on is kind of, future visioning that we've been doing. And that's related to new wetland habitat restoration, but also new ways to engage with the community in some of these areas. We primarily have been engaging with the community in Gary. And this next phase will give us the opportunity to really engage residents in the actual planning of some of these habitat restorations. So this aerial photo here on the right, it's not included, but MLK South Wetland is just to the south of that project area. Hatcher Park is up here in yellow. This whole area is over 400 acres, and we're calling it the Marshalltown Marsh Complex. And then the Little Calumet River runs right through here. And in this area, it's basically a channelized ditch section. You can see some of the old meanders in here, meander scrolls. So just to tell you a little bit about this project, Hatcher Park is a Gary public park. It's underutilized. The park system doesn't have the funding that it needs to be able to take care of a lot of its park space. But this park is really interesting. It's named after the former mayor of Gary, Richard Hatcher. He was the first African-American mayor of a major city in the United States. Local residents are, extremely proud of that history. And this is the Marshalltown community right here. So this park, it's overgrown with lots of weedy trees, but it's still an asset to the neighborhood. Residents are still getting out there. So we're looking at Hatcher Park as kind of a potential gateway to a lot of these wetland restorations. So we're working with the city of Gary, their parks department, and local residents to start to do restoration work at Hatcher Park. We're doing really basic work right now, just like clearing some brush, doing some basic invasive management, and then most importantly, just clearing public access a little bit. So there's some overgrown paths that we've been opening up. This is a photo from an Earth Day event that we hosted. Wild Indigo was leading it, and this was kind of like a kickoff to get residents aware of the work that we've been doing out here. But looking forward, how this ties to this Marshalltown Marsh project, We're currently in the first phase of the project, which is 60% engineering and design. We're doing that through funding with the Coastal States Organization in partnership with Indiana DNR coastal programs. And this is basically just looking at this complex, what can we do? What are the different restoration possibilities here from an engineering perspective? But then also looking at what are the public access opportunities that we have here. So in conjunction with that 60% engineering and design, Audubon Great Lakes is just starting a 2-year process for community input. And that's through the Coastal Habitat Restoration and Resilience Grant for Underserved Communities. It's a mouthful of a name, but it's a really exciting opportunity. So they're partnering with 2 local community organizations. Brown Faces, Green Spaces is the first, and the second is the Urban League of Northwest Indiana. And they're working with them to engage with local residents on a larger scale to gather input over 2 years for what local residents in this area would like to see out of a large scale wetland conservation project. So what they're interested in terms of habitat, but also what public access and recreational opportunities can we build into these areas. So this is just basically, I wanted to highlight this as an exciting example of what our partnership has been able to achieve, and the fact that it takes years and years to get to the point where we can start to do projects like this at a much larger scale. Yes, and that's it. And probably over time, but thank you, everybody.
You were great on time. Yeah, go ahead.
It looks like a lot of the questions have been answered already in the chat. So would you real quickly look over to Facebook Live to see if there's anything there?
No comments or questions there.
Okay, then maybe we could highlight some of the important ones here.
Yeah, so I think one of the questions from Barb, is any of the funding coming from the $1 billion federal investment in cleanup and restoration of rivers feeding into Lake Michigan? I think Gary answered that one in the chat, not at the moment, but still hopeful. And I know that there's lots of other grants coming across the area for, to support clean water and conservation. So those are really important. And I know Save the Dunes and the Wetlands Initiative and many other of our partners benefit from those grants as well. And then another question from Phil: in some places in Europe, Phragmites is used to thatch roofs. Is there any use we can make of it instead of using herbicide?
That's a good question. Honestly, I haven't seen too many other viable uses in the Midwest. Gary could probably speak to that more. I know different researchers have looked at different ways of potentially harvesting it for other uses. I think part of the issue with that right now is probably the cost effectiveness of that. So unfortunately, our best options right now are herbicide and fire.
Always looking for other sustainable answers, but sometimes when you gotta just get it done, you gotta do it the most effective.
Yeah, I will also say now that we have water control structures installed at some of these sites, keeping more water on portions of the site will hopefully help suppress some of that Phragmites. Phragmites likes slightly drier conditions than what will be established across some of those areas. And that would reduce the amount of herbicide that we'll have to, apply going forward.
And then Georgia had a quick question for Lindsay. Will you be continuing this collaboration with TWI and will you be making additional artwork?
It's a really good question. We have extended the residency to cover the outreach part of the project, but actually I hadn't even considered that, but I would be open to that. So that's a really good question and something we should discuss.
So Lindsay, I also wanted to ask you, after this exhibit closes, which is closing really soon, are your works scheduled to be shown anyplace else in the near or far future?
Well, so far, Downers Grove Library has offered to do an exhibition in fall of 2025. I'm still waiting to hear back from proposals, but it's it's a lot like writers sending out things and getting things put in the slush pile, whatever. You just have to keep asking. I have a number of irons in the fire. I've sent out a number of applications, so I'm waiting to hear back. But I'm hoping that there's a good response. Perhaps it'll be some of you have connections that you want to, get in touch with me about. That would be great. We're really open to all sorts of ideas.
I would highly recommend the Lebesnick Center for the Arts in Michigan City.
Your lips to their ears.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I do have the ear of the executive director, so
We must speak.
yes, we must speak, Lindsay.
Thank you, Nancy.
Your artwork is very very much in line with exhibits that I've seen them host in the past.
Great. Thank you so much. That would be a lovely offer to extend a connection there.
Yeah, I think your works are just really exquisite. And when I first saw them, I did think of the collars that you were describing, except I was thinking more of the Egyptian collars that you see in the tombs and things like that. So
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Okay, we've got another question from Horate. What is the water quality in the Hemi Marsh? Are there metals in the water since you are building over slag?
Yeah, so I think Gary responded a little bit, but at our sites along the west branch of the Little Cal, none of our sites are built on slag. I think most notably over in Illinois, Indian Ridge Marsh, there's a lot of slag deposits there. But that slag has been capped in the past by the Army Corps of Engineers. But there are definitely still issues with contaminants at a lot of the sites in the Calumet. Yeah, sorry, can't speak too much more to it.
Then we've got some round of applause and thanks in the comments too from Victoria. Just wanted to say give you those. Yeah, I think that wraps up questions so far, but please, if anyone has any more, go ahead.
Okay, and I just want to be respectful of people's time, so we have reached the 7:30 mark. Again, I want to remind people, December, we will not be meeting. So, take the time to spend to prepare yourself for the holidays or just take a little bit of a break. Traditionally, every January of every year, we've had a presentation by Save the Dunes, either the executive director or someone from Save the Dunes. So I'm hoping to kick off 2024 with a big bang, because Save the Dunes certainly has had a marvelous year. And I know that Em and the whole staff are looking forward to a really outstanding 2024. Really, all of you that were here with us today from TWI, the Wetlands Initiative, thank you so very much. And I also want to acknowledge Gary Sullivan, who was busy with his fingers flying over the keys and answering some very complicated technical questions. So Gary, thank you for being with us. And Abby also, really enjoyed having all of you participate in Green Drinks this evening. And all of our participants, this is the reason we do it. And I want to apologize to Barb, who seemed to have a problem of in and out, in and out, in and out. So hopefully next time it will be a better connection. So I guess that's about it. Em, do you want to do the final sign off?
Sure, I have just a couple of other Save the Dunes announcements to share. Thank you all for attending tonight, this recording and all previous Green Drink recordings. If you want to play catch up over the last couple of months of great conservation conversations that we've had here on Green Drinks are on the Save the Dunes YouTube channel and our Facebook page. So you can find all of those there. encourage you all to sign up for Save the Dunes e-newsletters that go out monthly. That's the best way to stay up to date with our advocacy, conservation, and community engagement events. So someone was asking in the comments about events. I think signing up for newsletters and just hearing what everyone is doing something's always going on. So there's always some way to get involved and come out and show your support. Save the Dunes does have 2 upcoming events I wanted to share really quickly. We've got our artist talk at the Barker House on Saturday, November 11th with Corey Hagelberg, who did a gorgeous woodcut for us for our 70th anniversary. So he'll be joining us at the Barker House for an artist talk and woodcut demo. So that's from 2 to 4 on Saturday, November 11th. And then we have our Opt Outside Black Friday hike that's in collaboration with the National Park Service. That will happen on Black Friday. That's November 24th at West Beach. So that'll be a ranger-led hike. Instead of shopping on Black Friday, come out and learn a little bit about the birding, botany, and geology and ecology of the Indiana Dunes. That's it.
Okay.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah, it's a wrap.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you guys. Thank you.